You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 402. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Anonymous.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humbled and quarantined host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Before we get started, guys, I set up a special link to help people affected by the coronavirus, and you can donate to Feed America. There is a lot of people in need out there, and Feed America is a great organization, and they're helping millions of people on a daily basis, and they also need your help. If you want to donate even $5, $10, it goes a long way. Head over to indiefilmhustle.com/help. Well, guys, today on the show, we have returning champion Emily Best from Seed&Spark. And I want to have Emily back to kind of talk about the state of indie film, how to debunk a bunch of myths that filmmakers have about not only the filmmaking process, the distribution process, how to raise money, all those kinds of things. And I couldn't have a better guest to do that. Now, I do want to let you know that we recorded this pre-COVID, so there will be no mention of coronavirus or anything like that in this episode. I recorded it around the time that the theatrical film aggregator, I guess you would call it, TUGG, went under. And we kind of talked a little bit about that and future of film aggregators and all that kind of stuff as well. But there is some amazing, amazing content in this episode. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Emily Best. I'd like to welcome back to the show returning champion, Emily Best. How are you, sweetie?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing all right. It's a Friday.
It is a Friday. I'm so glad to have you back. You were one of my original guests. I think you were like in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken, of the podcast, and now we're getting close to 400. So it's been 4 years, over 4 years since we've spoken. I mean, we've spoken, but we haven't been on the show. So it's crazy. A lot has happened in your world and in mine.
A few things. I remember you were a great interviewer back then, so I'm super excited to experience Alex plus 400 hours of practice.
I am the pressure. I don't know if I could take the pressure. This is way too much. So for people who don't know who you are, Emily, can you talk a little bit about who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Seed&Spark. Think of Seed&Spark like a digital studio. We are built to increase equity and inclusion in entertainment and optimize for the cultural impact of the work our creators make. Fundamentally, I believe equity and inclusion happens when creators can make a sustainable living from their work wherever they are. Diversity has to be both demographic and geographic and along a lot of dimensions. And building equity is really about building pathways that everyone has a fair chance of using. So our company is sort of divided up into three pieces that all work together to form our version of this digital studio. And unlike studios that profit off creators, our hope eventually is just to profit with creators. We have a national education program. We teach about 120 live workshops a year in more than 50 cities. And we have some online education as well on our website. We teach creators the tools for creative sustainability. We teach them how to understand, connect with audiences, learn to monetize them. We teach pitching, we teach distribution. Then we have a crowdfunding platform that has the highest campaign success rate in the world. And until this year, we have been entirely focused on motion pictures. We've helped more than 2,000 projects raise over $25 million with the highest campaign success rate in the world, which is about 80%.
That's awesome.
And this year, as I said to you before we started recording, we're rolling out across other storytelling verticals. So the highest campaign success rate in the world is now not limited just to filmmakers. If you make, podcast, books, games, software, music, theater, dance, what am I missing? There's so many ways to tell stories.
Yes.
If you're a storyteller in any medium, you can now take advantage of our suite of tools. And then we work on distribution with creators. So we do have an online streaming platform. It is highly curated right now because it's actually not our core focus. We really see the streaming platform as a tool in the toolkit of creators who are building creative distribution strategies, and that's really where we have focused our attention. So we work with creators on building eventized distribution, sort of rolling their content. I have to say content now because we're not just talking movies and shows anymore. Rolling their stories out for live audiences in different places through various eventized strategies. And then our newest addition is we have found a pathway for right now just film, although we have figured out that it won't be just for film in the future. But our pathway for to bring films into workplaces to help companies build more inclusive workplaces. And so if you think of the education is sort of the pipeline and the creator cultivation, our online platform is where you can build audiences and make your work. And then we have these distribution strategies. So that's a studio. It's just built really differently for the things that we care about.
That's man, you are a busy lady.
We're busy.
Yes, there's no question. I thought I hustled. My God, you guys are.
I told you, Seed&Spark hustle.
TM, Seed&Spark hustle. Yeah. Exactly. So you how old is Seed&Spark? It's been around for how many years now?
7 and a pinch. We launched in December of 2012.
Okay.
We relaunched the website in, what is time, Alex? The fall of 2015, we relaunched the website. Yeah. And that, I would say, was really when we kind of started to get off the ground. Because the first version of the website, as anybody out there who used us pre-2015, sorry about the technology. We were doing our level best.
You actually talked to me around that time. It was around the fall of 2015 is when I launched the podcast in the summer. So it would have probably been around that time when I interviewed you. Yep. Well, I can only tell you from my experience, everyone listening, I crowdfunded my first film, This Is Meg, with Seed&Spark in 2017. I think it was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And I had a wonderful time. And first of all, I can't stand crowdfunding personally. It's just too brutal.
It's really hard.
It's hard. It's brutal. It's emotional. It's rough. But the experience with you guys and working with the platform was wonderful. And we were able to fund the film completely. And I was able to shoot the movie pretty much in black and like I was in the black when I was shooting. So that was amazing.
That's an amazing case study. We're going to follow up with you after that.
Yeah, I mean, because I already started shooting because it was such a small budget before we launched the campaign, because it was just me, a camera, and my main actress. So I'm like, okay, before we bring in all the other cast, let's just shoot all the stuff we're going to shoot at you in your house. And we did that. So as we were shooting, like in my crowdfunding video, there was scenes from the movie already, because I was already shooting this. So I was already shooting the movie. Yeah. So when I was all said and done, we looked at the numbers. I'm like, I think we can literally be free, because we didn't have to worry about money. Yeah. So I looked at the entire experience as an experiment for me. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. As a filmmaker, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to try this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's, it is what it is. But it worked. It did very well. And also got accepted to Hulu. So we sold it to Hulu.
Oh, dang.
So
That's so great. When you're already in the black, like you're not worried about the sales price as much, and you're just like, that's a cherry on top. That's awesome.
No, for that film, it went to Hulu. It got sold internationally to different territories, and I sell it on my own streaming platform, and I still make money with it all the time as well. And my partner, who was the star of it, Jill, we were extremely happy, and Seed&Spark was just a wonderful part of it. So that's why I always promote you guys, because you're. Like I say, you personally are kind of like a shining light in the mud and darkness that is this industry in so many ways.
We're in a weirdly dark time. For as much money as there is pouring into the business, we are in a weirdly dark time. I mean, you and I talked about this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I came out of the sort of January festival scene feeling really distressed because, I go there and I talk to festivals and I talk to indie distributors and I talk to platforms and I talk to theaters and I talk to creators, I talk to producers, and none of them are like, I'm rolling in cash. They're like, where the fuck is the money?
Exactly.
Where's the money? I'm not making money. He's not making money. They're not making money. She's not making money. Like, where is the money? And
it's scary.
When Distributor closes, when TUGG shuts down, there's an indication that the ecosystem is not super healthy right now. And it doesn't surprise me. So over the last 7 years, we've seen the great pivot to streaming, right? Netflix 10 years ago decides we're going to go all streaming. They have this big vision. They're not wrong about it, except that nobody's talking about the fact that they're not a profitable business, right? They have a ton of income, but it doesn't seem to be coming from a model that nets profit. In fact, they're $26 billion in debt, 22,
Correct.
26, something like that.
They're using the Amazon model. Like, they're just going to go into debt and debt and debt. But the main difference between the Amazon model and them is Amazon is extremely diversified, where Netflix is not.
Yeah, that's right. And so we see that happening. And there are a couple of things that really bother me about this model. Number one is, as everyone else in the industry has gone the way of subscription streaming, there are 3 things that are happening that I think are challenging. And I'm going to name them up front so you can remind me, because by the time I get to number 2, I will already forgotten. That's what having small children did to my brain.
I understand.
Number 1 has to do with personalized recommendation algorithms. Number 2 is what it does for creators' long-term sustainability. And there was a number 3. Look, I've already forgotten what the third one was. Maybe I'll get there by the end. So number 1 is if all of these major companies are competing around subscription streaming, what they are competing for is the most of subscriber time they can, so that you don't have time to go to another platform, right? They want to be your sort of sole space. By competing for subscriber time, it means they're optimizing for keeping you on the platform. And they're all doing this through personalized recommendation algorithms. Personalized recommendation algorithms, those are like math functions that are trying to figure out what you would want to watch. If they are programmed to keep you on the platform, they're programmed to keep you comfortable. They are not programmed to challenge your worldview or change your mind or make you think differently or build empathy for your neighbor. Now, from the place that I sit in the universe, talking to creators all across the country who are trying to tell untold stories and raise up voices that have not been listened to for the last century of motion picture entertainment, they are trying to build bridges, build empathy, change minds, change perspectives. And yet the mechanism for delivering entertainment is literally programmed to thwart its cultural impact. So that's challenge number 1. Now, I think that leaves a lane wide open for creators who want to build real community, for platforms that want to bridge the online and offline experience, and for theaters and festivals to become this meeting place. Because if the platform is programmed to keep you there and to isolate you inside your own bubble, there's all this research now that shows that personalized recommendation algorithms create the same kind of content bubbles on your streaming platforms you get in opinion bubbles on social media, right? So that's one challenge that has to do with like audiences are getting isolated and insulated with the way that entertainment has gone, even as we have the rise of equity and inclusion in entertainment. And these creators want to do exactly the fucking opposite of that. Since you haven't scolded me, I'm going to assume I can continue to drop F-bombs.
You could, I mean, I was just going to let you go, and it's okay. I've dropped an occasional F-bomb on the show as well. So you can go.
Thank you.
No, you're passionate, and I appreciate that. You're passionate about it, and look, listen. I have some episodes that make a sailor blush. So
I won't do that. I probably won't do that. But I did finally read something that said people who swear are more trustworthy, and I was like, see, that's why I do it.
Sure, that works.
The second thing is that we're starting to see these digital studios operating like the pre-trust bust studios. So they're signing all these first look deals where they own all your material up front, and they are spending a shit ton of money on a few creators who have no long-term upside against the content. So it used to be, you could sell off. I mean, what your experience is there's like a really long tail monetization strategy. And if you build something that's really good and it has, licensing rights,
Friends, Seinfeld.
Rights,
Friends
whatever,
and Seinfeld.
anything like that. Like you could make money on it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That is going away.
Yep. It is.
Right. And creators across the board are being turned into work for hire against their own IP.
Mm-hmm.
See,
it's an emergency. They're coming.
Yes, that's right. But this part is crazy to me. And I see creators like lining up to give away their IP into 99-year contracts with Netflix, who could cancel you after 2 seasons because it's financially beneficial for them to do so. And then they own your content forever. Yep. Your baby, your stuff, right? They can decide where you go. Somebody who is not talking to you is writing a recommendation algorithm that may never surface your content to the appropriate audience because the math function hasn't really figured it out. So that's the second piece that I think is a huge challenge and is really disrupting the marketplace. And the final piece is that with the exception of Disney, Apple, and Amazon, Disney makes content to drive to their live events, and Apple drives you to buy devices, and Amazon is selling you content so you buy toilet paper from them, right? But the AT&T, right, which is now Time Warner, right? They own the pipes, they own the devices, they own your internet into your house, and they own the content on those pipes. Like these are massively consolidated conglomerates. These are not ethical business models, and they are driving the price of creativity down as they're competing for one another. It's sort of like Uber and Lyft. Like in order to compete, they have to drive the price that they are paying drivers down. So you're commoditizing creative labor.
Yes.
You're not giving people opportunity to build long-term equity, and they're sucking up a ton of capital, but these are not profitable business models.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all. But now I wanted to ask you, because I've written about this a lot as well. I believe that there is a devaluation of media in general, of visual media, because it happened with books in the publishing industry first. It happened then in the music industry, and now it's happening to us. So if you want to see a model of what we're going to be, just look at the music industry. There used to be 10 labels. Now there's like 4. And before you used to have to pay $18 for a song. Now it's essentially free. Beyonce, one of the biggest stars in the world, is making 1/10 of a cent every time it's played on Spotify. And that's considered good. So there's no sustainability in that. And that's where we're all going in the film industry. Would you agree?
Yes. And the way that musicians get around it is they tour and they build a direct relationship with their audience. And that's what creators across industries have to learn to do. Yep. So that's really what we're building on the distribution side on Seed&Spark, is like the infrastructure for creators to be able to tour things like movies.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And there are lots of examples of it in 10 years ago, was it 10 years ago or 8 years ago, with a film called Good Dick, was one of the first sort of, widely lauded self-theatrical releases, but people had been doing eventized releasing. I mean,
since Dolomite.
Yeah, exactly. Dolomite, you have Tyler Perry, Cheryl Bedford did this with Dark Girls. I mean, there are people who have been doing versions of this because they've been left out of the mainstream in the first place. I actually think Dolomite is one of the best examples for a creator of any kind to follow. Most especially because he wasn't discouraged while he was bad at it.
he was like a successful Ed Wood.
But he was basically while I'm bad at it, I'm just going to work until I get better at it.
Exactly.
It wasn't
but he also
I
knew
didn't emerge perfect and therefore I quit. It's just such an incredible story in that way.
And he also understood his audience. He understood his niche audience, and he made a product for that niche audience. And I watched that movie, and as I'm watching that movie, I was just like, this is amazing.
It's a roadmap.
It's a roadmap on how to do it. And he took risks. He put all his royalties up from his music, his comedy albums and he did 10 movies or something like that. And he owned them.
It's also a lesson to make stuff that's important to your audience, right? Like
Correct.
That scene at the end where his co-star stops him and says, "Nobody puts people like me." I'm like, no. Nobody puts people like me on the screen. It does matter, right? And so I think all of this is an opportunity. What it means is filmmakers have to stop subscribing to the myth of getting picked. They really have to stop subscribing to the I'll just go away and make the perfect thing and then I will get noticed. It just doesn't work like that anymore. Not if you want to build long-term career equity. Could you maybe write a really great script and get it picked up by Netflix? Sure.
It's a lottery ticket.
Is that also, not only is it a lottery ticket, is it the best way to build long-term career equity? I mean, I don't know, go ask people who've had their shows that they worked on for years and that they loved and nurtured canceled after a season or two with no information or data about how that decision was made and see what they say.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's because I feel that not only screenwriters, but I think filmmakers are living in the past, and they're making movies like it was 1990. And then all of a sudden, for lack of a better term, Miramax, who was the company, I know, but that was the company in the 90s who did what they did. They, if it's not Miramax, Fox Searchlight or Sony Classics, those guys, they came in and built up these careers. Remember in the 90s, every month, Mariachi, Clerks, Reservoir, Linklater, there was just so many, and so many filmmakers are still living in that.
An amazing stretch of launching white male filmmakers' careers.
Exactly. Really there was the occasional John Singleton and Spike Lee, but that's, a rarity. And then Robert, the only Latino in the bunch, I think, being a Latino myself. So that's why I love Robert so much. But that's basically what it was. And people are still thinking that. And I think now, and this is the first time I've actually even thought about this, but you're absolutely right, is screenwriters are still living in the world that you're going to write a spec script or either get a job on a show or sell it or something like that. But that's not sustainable anymore because you're not going to get the back end and the residuals that industry has lived on. I was talking to an actor the other day who was a very successful character actor. He's been in 1,000 things. And he was telling me, he's like, Alex, the residuals are gone. He used to do 1 or 2 national spots a year, commercial spots, and he was good. Those are all going away. And now 80% of films are being done with non-union. So the unions are starting to lose their power. It's a very scary time. And I keep telling people, this is a good economic time. We're not in a downturn. We're not in a crash per se. If 2008 happens again or worse, what do you think's going to happen to the TUGGs and the strippers of the world? And even Netflix's of the world for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting question to ask because there are some companies like Seed&Spark, like Gumroad, who we built ourselves to be around for a while.
You have a solid foundation.
Yeah. And a business model that, I mean, crowdfunding emerged from the ashes of the 2008 financial crisis.
Right.
That's what crowdfunding was built to overcome. At the time, it was like people who had rich uncles, their rich uncles weren't investing. And so they had to turn to a thing. And now crowdfunding's gotten a lot more sophisticated. And also we don't have like, it was also built on the like Facebook open social graph, which doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Yes. It had to get a lot more sophisticated, but it's also available to a lot more people. And, you know, we've certainly spent all of our time making it a tool that anybody from any kind of background can actually use successfully. But it means, you know, it means coming to work differently. In terms of the financial time, I think there are more tools available to creators to monetize their work than ever before, but it's not, you don't make your work the same way that you would if you were aiming for a Netflix, and you don't, you know, you don't raise $2.5 million for your movie and make it and then figure out who's going to buy it. Like, I just don't think you should do that anymore.
You can't do that with $100,000, let alone $2.5 million. Unless it's $100,000 you can lose.
I was going to say it's actually more important not to do it with a $100,000 movie. And that's why we started teaching workshops on distribution, is to really give creators the tools they needed. One, like, okay, so we've been teaching these crowdfunding workshops for half a decade now.
Yeah.
And we started teaching them in Atlanta, and we did a creative marketplace survey there and a few other cities where we were teaching, where there's like big, solid creator communities and like a lot of talk about like creating a sustainable independent ecosystem. And so we surveyed creators on what are your challenges in funding and team building and in distribution. And in funding, everybody's like, where are the investors, right? Which is like just a question you have for the rest of your life if you're going to make.
Where's the money? Where's the money?
Yeah. The second question is like, what are the challenges in building team? And those are like, you know, finding the core team, making sure it's diverse enough, being able to pay them, like these sort of things. By the way, what we have seen from economic surveys of our crowdfunders is that 80% of money raised in crowdfunding goes to pay key cast and crew, which I find really exciting.
That's awesome.
Because it's a jobs creator. And the final section we asked about was distribution. And we had a laugh in the office because most of the answers to the questions that we asked about distribution were literally question marks.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
People didn't know what they didn't know. And we're like, okay, let's do this. So we created sort of a distribution 101 about like, what is it really to distribute in this marketplace? Like, what are the steps? What are the capabilities? What are the possibilities? We interviewed a bunch of like key players in independent distribution and TV, et cetera. And then we pulled together a bunch of case studies of creators who took the time to really get to know their audience, built up the important organizational partnerships and influencer partnerships and festival partnerships, and really always had their larger career in mind. And similar to your story, managed to really well monetize their films and make sure those films reached the audiences that they really cared to reach with them, which we have myriad examples of where distributors fail to do it. And something I often do in the room, because, you know, we're in cities across the country. And so some cities who are like, you know, basically never featured in movies that we all see on the big screen, right? Like cities that are kind of absent from our national imagination. So I go in and we're in a room of 200 people, and I'll be like, okay, who here is working on a project that's like really not like anything that's been made before? And like half the hands might go up.
Sure.
And I'm like, cool. I just want you to know that means no sales agent has ever sold a movie like yours before, and no distributor has ever distributed a movie like yours before. They are not the experts. They know things based on their past experience, but you've just told me they've never had an experience like working with a creator like you on a movie like this. So if you don't show up being able to talk to them about who your audience is, how they like to be reached, how they like to be talked to, everything that Dolomite knew about his audience that got the record label to call him and the studio to call him. It wasn't until he knew all those things that distributors were literally lining up to work with him. Mm-hmm. Right? And because he knew all that, the popular critical opinion didn't mean shit.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. It doesn't. It
didn't matter, right? So I feel like there's just this mentality that like, I'm just the creator and all I'm supposed to know is the creative things. If you don't know at least enough to be dangerous,
you're done.
Yeah. And there's so many examples of movies like there was some really terrible statistics actually of like movies made by Black directors who would go to Sundance and get a nice looking distribution deal. And the distributors really didn't know what to do with Black films besides like put them out on DVD during Black History Month. I
know you're not joking. It's just ridiculous.
I have specific examples to point to, and they don't make their money back. And then that is a mark on the creator, not the distributor.
Correct.
And that is a mark on an entire quote unquote niche audience, even though it's like 13% of our population, plus everybody else who doesn't need to look like the protagonist in the movie to enjoy it. Right. There's a lot of us, by the way.
Right. Exactly.
So I think it's just a time for us to deeply reevaluate the myths of success in our system and start elevating different stories about what's successful.
So I went to. I wanted to ask you this because I mean I've been neck deep in the distribution side of stuff now for a while, and then once I got involved with the distributor, debacle and became kind of like the spearhead of that situation, which by the way has not finished. We're still going through stuff with that scenario. I was invited to go speak at AFM, and I know your feelings about AFM, but I've read your feelings on AFM, and that's fine. I completely understand. By the way, AFM dropped 2 days off their schedule for this year because it went from
marketplace anymore.
Because it went from 800 distributors down to 351 this year, and then next year is probably going to be less. But the one thing I did notice, because I went this year and I went last year, was I just realized that nobody understands what's going on. None of the distributors are really at that level, the mid and low level distributors, which are where a lot of these indie movies would get picked up by, not the big studios, not the Fox Searchlights, or even, God forbid, any of the major studios. There's only a handful up there that will even look at them. So we're talking about mid level and below. They were clueless. Like I literally was in meetings with distributors, and they were trying to pitch themselves to the distributor, people, filmmakers are like, hey, we want to help we want to pick up all those distributor movies. And I'm like, okay. So I would do the meetings, and I would just sit there and I would listen to them, and I just ask them about their business model, and they would just lay out this old rehash crap kind of system.
Yep.
And then I just turned to one of them and I said, you guys really don't know what's going on, do you? You have no idea how to make any money with these, do you? There's no guarantee.
It's every time I talk to somebody who's launching a new niche streaming platform, and I ask them what their customer acquisition strategy is, and they're like, oh, like Facebook ads, whatever. I'm like, cool, you're going to compete with Netflix and Apple, and like they're buying all the keywords that might matter to you. And frankly, if your differentiator is like diverse content, for example,
forget it. Or indie.
Deserves that.
Oh yeah, indie. And there's a lot of indie distributors. Like indie streaming, no one cares. No, this is not 1990.
Indie is a budget level. It is not a genre.
Not anymore. Like in the 90s, that's when indie kind of started. That was the whole indie genre, which there were a lot less films and all that kind of stuff. But when you launched your streaming service, you had an audience built in from it was perfect. It was really smart.
And even then, we fundamentally don't believe that that's the right path forward. Like, it is a tool in the toolkit of creators who are building these larger connective strategies. I'm like, for me, if you're going around and doing amazing events around your movie, let's say, or your podcast launch, or you're doing like live book tour or whatever, that stuff should be available online so that after the event, when all those people who had a great time go home to their friends and are like, I just watched this amazing movie, and their friends are like, where can I see it? The answer can't be nowhere. Which is often the case, right? So to us, there are some versions of what was formerly known as day and date that we think when built around events we've actually seen can really work. Naomi McDougall-Jones's Joyful Vampire Tour is an incredible example of
friend of the show.
Yes. I'm sure her book is out. Everybody go buy The Wrong Kind of Women.
Yes. She's great. She was wonderful. And I had her, when I heard about her story, I had her on the show and she's very frank about the whole situation. She's how depressing it is. And when she went to like her day in and day and she's like, but iTunes, the numbers weren't there. I'm like, well, that was the one thing I was going to say about AFM. I realized that TVOD is essentially almost gone for independent film. It's dead. Unless you can personally give a very rabid audience and you could drive that for maybe a week or two. But the days of what the Polish brothers did with For Lovers Only, $500,000 on TVOD, that's gone.
You drive it to your own website at this point, or you drive it to like what Naomi did is you drive it to Seed&Spark where you're getting paid between 20 and 50 cents a minute streamed. Right. Then it's valuable.
Right. So TVOD's gone. SVOD is kind of like if you're lucky enough to even get an SVOD deal, meaning like a Netflix or a Hulu deal, which those deals are very few far between now because they're just focusing on their own content. Yep. Then you got Amazon Prime, which now rakes from a penny to an hour to 12 cents an hour, depending if your algorithm likes you. So that's not really the greatest thing. So now the big keyword is AVOD. So AVOD is where a lot of money is being made. And I see the numbers from Tubi. I see the numbers from Pluto. Now Peacock's going to come out as an AVOD platform as well. So AVOD is not, we're all going back to television. It's hilarious. But that's where the money is for independent films. Next year, it could be something else. With the landscape changing so rapidly, because you and I both basically since 2015,
coming up together. Yeah.
We have basically been coming up together, and we've been, we're in different sides of the battlefield. I feel like you're at some points, I'm over here, I'm in this trench, you're in that trench, but we're both seeing what's happening, and it's just insane that the whole landscape is changing so rapidly that these quote unquote professionals have no idea what's going on. And I think the casualties are the creators and the filmmakers.
Yeah, I would argue that it's not necessarily they don't know what's going on, is it doesn't behoove them to pay attention to it because it's too scary, right?
They have ostrich syndrome. They have an ostrich syndrome. Yeah,
they're disappearing really rapidly. There's some of them who have, one of the indie distributors out there who I won't name, still occasionally picks up movies out of the festival circuit, does kind of mostly service deals. They do like 30 movies a month.
They will not be named, but we all know who it is.
But they're actually backed up by a softcore porn business.
I did not know that.
It's not softcore porn. It's like, it's like
Skinamax,
like Zombie Sluts 2 or whatever.
Fair enough.
That stuff. And that's fine. They're not upfront about it, but like, that's fine. Like, do that business.
But that's not what they sell. That's not
your indie business that's giving you money.
That's all it is. Oh my God.
So I feel like, nobody is going to solve the problem of distribution for creators. And something that we just keep saying over and over again is distribution is not something you get. Distribution is something you do.
Oh, great.
It's part of your job to build your career. I don't, as the CEO of my company, get to be like, yeah, but actually selling shit to customers is not my problem. Like, that's insane. That's my only problem.
That's business. That's business.
There is no content without a consumer unless you are super rich and are just making things for fun.
It's a hobby. It's a hobby.
Yeah, if you want to make a sustainable business, you have to care about your unit economics, and you have to care about your customer. And you have to know about your customer, and you have to know how to find your customer. And like creators, I've seen creators sort of shudder at all this stuff. And I'm like, sorry, but like, what makes you so special that you shouldn't have to think about the person who's going to spend their hard-earned dollar on the thing that you made? Mm-hmm. When in fact, your audience is probably just as smart as you think you are.
Preach.
And frankly, like the reason that I love and invest in crowdfunding so much is like, you cannot find a person who has run a successful crowdfunding campaign who doesn't have 5 at least incredible stories of this person found out about my crowdfunding campaign, who either, knew me from way back then, or I've never met them before in my life. And they were so inspired. They did XYZ for my film and it changed the game. Everybody has that story.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
We have I shot my first movie in Maine. And so if you're going to shoot a movie in Maine, there has to be a lobster bake scene, or what are you doing with your life?
Seriously, why? Why would you not?
And this guy showed up on time in the morning with a giant box. He bought us 25 lobsters, which was 5x the number we actually needed, and dropped them off and was like, "You kids have fun," and left. And that happened because of our crowdfunding campaign.
That's amazing.
I don't honestly know we would have kept the lobster bake scene specifically if somebody hadn't been like, "Yeah, I'll bring you lobster," because that shit's expensive.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like the thing that you discover when you start to really meaningfully engage with your audience, or your customer, if I'm allowed to call them that, is they will love you and support you and do things for you haven't imagined. 3 of the filmmakers who have used our website throughout the years just became investors in Seed&Spark.
That's awesome.
Right?
That's amazing.
Some at very, very small amounts who are just like, what you did on the platform changed things for me. I want to get involved in your next. So your audience may be the next group of people who support your film, and cultivating that audience is about making everything that happens after this film easier for the next one and the one after that.
So Emily, what you're telling me, let me get this straight here. You're telling me that as a filmmaker, you have to think about your audience. You've got to think about the business. You also have to create your art, and you're not just going to get picked out of the crowd and someone from Mount Hollywood's going to come down and tap you on the shoulder and say, you will now have a career for the rest of your life. Is that what you're saying? I just want to hear it clearly, please.
Yeah, and cry me a river if you don't like it. I didn't pick capitalism. It's not my favorite version of economics, okay? But this is the one we live in, and the landscape we live in is there is a ton of opportunity. Finally, the chance, you can literally go online and with free tools, you can make your movie available behind a paywall tomorrow. Right? That was not true 15 years ago, right? Or what? I don't know what is time anymore.
10 years. Yeah, 10 years ago was very difficult.
So there is tremendous opportunity, but we live in an incredibly fragmented marketplace across independent creators that is incredibly consolidated at the top. And the reason that we go out and educate filmmakers is because the more consolidated it gets at the top, the steeper that Mount Hollywood becomes, and the harder it is to ever get picked at all.
If that's what your goal is.
Well, the thing is, if you super invest, look at Dolomite. He's super invested in building a direct audience relationship, no matter after he got told no. And then they called him. And that's what happens. You build a really great audience. They come fucking calling you.
I can only tell you that since you started, you were one of my first guests. From the moment that I interviewed you to the moment I have now, I've been trying to get into the Hollywood. I drank that mariachi Kool-Aid a long time ago, and it took me until I was 40 to make my first feature film because I was waiting to get picked or playing the game. And I changed the rules because I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait anymore. The tools are here. I'm going to go out and do my own thing. And the second I changed the rules and I said, you know what? I'm not going to play by your rules. I'm going to play by my own rules. I'm going to create my own little sandbox.
Yep.
And I'm going to do my own thing. And the second I did that, in these last 4.5, almost 5 years, I can't even tell you how many people have contacted me purely because I'm doing my thing. I'm doing it my way, and I don't need them. It's kind of like a bank loan. It's like a credit card.
You're doing more than that, though. Well, you are amplifying the voices in the community who are making more opportunities available for creators. You're sharing your experience incredibly openly. You're making it easier for somebody else to make that switch that you made earlier on in their career, and you're providing them the tools and information to do that. And that's the superpower I think we have. The challenge with the notion of independent film is independent sounds like it means alone, and it really doesn't.
No, you
right?
can't.
we will not create an infrastructure for ourselves that can compete with any individual Hollywood studio unless we are unified. Mm-hmm. And it's what people like Naomi did when she went on the road for the Joyful Vampire Tour. Yeah. They were literally filming and cutting episodes like Kiwi is a genius. Like, I don't know how she did it all. Yeah. Camera, cutting the thing, putting the story together, like editing. It
was amazing. It was amazing.
You know, and probably driving the van sometimes. Anyway, like I think there's the sharing it back and building the expertise and kicking the door open and pulling the people up behind you. That's actually the most powerful tool we have.
It is.
For manifesting a really healthy ecosystem. And I do think it's on the businesses to be super transparent about their own unit economics and their own, capacity to stick around. Because there are some platforms that creators are relying on that are super, super leveraged, and it makes it hard for them to stick around. It makes them really vulnerable. So I just think it's like, it's a time where we do have to be experts in our industry, because it's on us to remake it with the values that we really actually want to we care about.
No question. And it's tough enough. Everything we're talking about is tough enough as independent filmmaker. Like this is. Like, remember before the tough part was to make the movie. Now that's not the toughest part anymore. The technology has made it so affordable now that you can make an affordable, good looking independent film. The problem now is getting it sold, getting it out there, doing all that stuff. And then it's tough enough without companies like Distribber going under and doing what they did. And the situation with TUGG is another scenario, which is still a developing story. But
we don't know what we don't know happen there. But with companies like Distribber, I think it's so important for filmmakers to ask really key questions about how they make money and how they distribute money. Now, look, there's not a lot you can do if a company is like literally not being forthcoming about what's actually happening.
Or mismanage, or just look, companies go under all the time.
Totally. It's and especially in our business, it's distribution companies have been going out of business since the dawn of time. That's not anything new. Right. I think we talked about this with Distribber, an aggregation platform is not a distributor. Those are two very different things.
They should be just a pass-through. They should just be a service. They're a post house, essentially.
It's very often that some of these technology solutions are sold as sort of distribution, deals or solutions, and they're not. They're just technology solutions. I think it's important to be forthcoming about what it takes on behalf of filmmakers to really leverage the tools. So like, we weren't just going to build a crowdfunding platform and be like, this is the best one. Why? Because it is. Like, a crowdfunding platform is what the fuck you make of it.
Right.
But that's not also fair to say to people, like, here's a great tool. Get good at using it. Good luck. Like, the reason that we invest so much in education is like, if we want to be the quote unquote best in the world, it's only because our creators are the most prepared. They're the most prepared to succeed. That like our secret sauce really isn't more than that, is that we prepare creators probably better than anyone else. And we're sticklers about it a little bit.
As you should. Look, come on. This is such a brutal business. I mean, I'd rather you be a stickler than, getting your ass handed to you from a distributor or something.
And I'd rather be a stickler and have you have a good first successful crowdfunding experience than, burn you on like the platforms that have like 10, 11% success rate. Like, people come to us all the time from other platforms being like, I had a terrible experience. I never thought I was going to crowdfund again. And they come to one of our workshops and they start to feel like a glimmer of hope and possibility around crowdfunding. We've converted a lot of people who've had unsuccessful campaigns into successful ones by simply preparing them. And we can't do it all for all facets of the business. We're not here to prepare you to produce, like, for production. We're not here to prepare you for every single element. And we certainly can't conceivably prepare everyone because, every film in this case, every film is could have a totally unique distribution plan that's actually appropriate for it. So what we can do is equip creators with enough knowledge to prepare themselves. But like, that's as far as we can take it.
And you're doing a lot.
Sure. But I just think like, you know, there is a big personal responsibility piece here. And I get the like, why should I have to do it all? And I'm like, because capitalism, frankly, and like, I don't like it either, but
it's the world we live in.
But I would rather do it all. And I say this to people all the time, probably 70 to 80% of my job is shit I don't particularly love to do.
Right. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And I do it because the 20 to 30% is so rewarding. I wouldn't have it any other way. And P.S., I get to choose who I work with, and I don't have to work with assholes. And that I will
cherish,
lose sleep over for the rest of my life. Like if I have to lose sleep over other parts of the business so that I never have to work with an asshole, happy as a clam. But that's, I mean, I think that's part of it is like, you know, we also sell creators this myth that like, when you're really successful, all you have to do is the cool part.
No.
And that's just never true. There's always like, I'm pretty sure that a lot of those really successful actors don't love going on 20 city press junkets.
Yeah. But they know the business. They understand the business.
You know, and we all have a version, like what is it? Like everybody has to eat a shit sandwich. It's what shit sandwich you tolerate eating.
It's Guillermo del Toro. I heard him speak once and he said, being in Hollywood is like eating a shit sandwich. You could change the bread. You could put some lettuce on it. You could put a little nice vegan mayo on it, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you're still eating shit.
Yeah. That sounds right.
That's exactly it. Now, the one thing I've been pushing a lot in the last year or so, and I've been talking about it loosely over the course of all the time I've been doing this, but is the concept of being a filmtrepreneur, being an entrepreneurial filmmaker. And I do truly believe that the only way moving forward is to become an entrepreneurial, understanding every business, creating multiple revenue streams. That includes touring, that includes ancillary product lines, that includes services you could build, all these things around films and or companies and or filmmakers and creators. And you're not just handing it over to a third-party company and praying that they're going to give you a check. That could be one revenue stream, but not all of them. Is that, do you agree with that concept?
Yeah. You know, there's a term that a friend of mine introduced to me recently, which is that of a portfolio career.
Yes.
And I think when you talk about creative entrepreneurship, it's often not built around a single vertical of storytelling or a single monetization stream, right? Like, I don't think anybody is really just making money, even the big directors are all directing commercials on the side. You know what I mean? Like Scorsese directed a commercial recently, and I was like, yeah, because they probably like
he was in a commercial. The hiring was an actor.
Yeah, exactly. Like whatever it is, like you have to diversify your revenue stream over time, and I think for freelancers, it can feel super hectic to think about, well, I have to do a little of this and a little of that and some brand work and some whatever, and then I do my own stuff. But the concept of a portfolio career is like, you know, my experience is that some of the most multi-talented, multi-capable people I've ever met happen to end up in independent filmmaking for whatever reason that is. And so these are people who, it's not just that they have multiple talents, but they have multiple interests. And I do think there is a way to synthesize that. If you think about all of these interests laddering up to a portfolio career, it's a career that actually is built up out of all the things I'm interested in and talented at. And I don't have to feel like I'm just a jack of all trades, master of none. Like, to be a CEO, it's a portfolio job.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? Like, you have to have leadership and management skills and some HR skills and some like a little bit of technical understanding and a little
creative,
bit of, it's a portfolio job. Being a film director is a portfolio job. You have to know so many things about so many things just to make a set really go the way that you want it to go. Being a producer,
politics and all of that stuff.
Yeah, being a producer, one of the most portfolio jobs in the universe. Like, you have to be able to like organize all the coffees and entice and dazzle investors. Like, it's a crazy fucking job. So I think it's in line with the full skill set. And if I think about the creators who have built incredible long-term IP value, the Duplass brothers who we work with,
I love
among them, like Mark talks all the time about going up the Hollywood Hill, like coming out of their first like big Sundance premiere, getting hired for a studio thing, and realizing that was not what they wanted to do. Then making everything for super cheap, owning all of the IP, and now having a giant library to license.
Yes.
And that is long-term wealth that they have built.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like what Tyler Perry did. He's built an entire empire.
Dude, and has anybody made a more baller move than Tyler Perry recently? Buying a former Confederate army base and converting it into a Black-owned studio.
One of the biggest studios in the world, honestly. And Hollywood still ignores him. He's kind of like the most ignored mogul ever. Like,
he doesn't need them.
He doesn't. No, he doesn't, and he knows it. You know, he used them for what he was good for, but now he's got a Netflix deal going on and all sorts of other stuff that he's got going on. It's insane. And I love the Duplass brothers are amazing. They're one of the inspirations for me making This Is Meg, because I did it with a script mint and I did all that stuff. And I was lucky enough to meet, but I saw Mark and Jay speak on one of their book tours for that great book that they wrote, Like Brothers. And I had one of the winners of your thing, the
Hometown Heroes.
Yeah. Oh God, they're two young girls. They're really
Megan and Hannah.
Yes, they were
Filmmakers.
They were on the show, and they were just so excited to be filmmakers. It was just like they're so happy.
I wish I could bottle their energy and distribute it to everybody, because they're having it's hard, but like they managed to have fun in ways that I just really admire. They sent the silliest, most wonderful birthday message I've ever received in my entire life came from those two. And actually Megan has become an instructor for Seed&Spark. So she's teaching our workshops. I'm just about to go to Winston-Salem and do a creative sustainability summit with her. Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
they're remarkable.
I mean, what you're doing, Emily, and what you've done you are honestly one of the few good people doing what, you know.
I don't think that's true. I really appreciate it.
No. Listen. No. Before you stop me, I'm going to say something, okay? Because I know you're going to say, no. Look, there are many good people, and there are many good people, you know, taking up arms, and there are many. But you're one of those shining lights, and have been since I started. Well, I've started 20 years ago, 25 years ago in the business. But during this time that, you know, we've been coming up, I've seen people come and go. I've seen companies come and go, people rip people off, all this kind of stuff. You've been very constant, and you've only had the best intentions in mind, at least from what I can see, from what I've known of you, is you're truly trying to help creators. You're truly trying to help filmmakers with your platform in the way you're doing it, and doing it on your own. And by the way, by dancing to your own song. You know, there's no question about it. You definitely are dancing to your own song, and you created a platform that you're like, you know what, screw the big boys. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to help filmmakers, and I'm going to help. Now you're helping all creators with your platform. And, you know, that's what I try to promote with Indie Film Hustle and with my other companies as well, is to try to help educate and push filmmakers forward, and also give them a nice spoonful of reality. Because I'd rather them get a spoonful than a punch in the face from somebody else. And I think you do the exact same thing. So I do appreciate you doing what you do.
That's so kind of you. It does, on our door, the door between our conference room and our kitchen in the office. Yeah. Can you see what that says?
It says, "We are truth tellers." That's awesome.
That's a really important key thing. So when you talk about the dose of reality,
yes,
I think the most important thing we can do in this business to help ourselves and our peers is to tell the truth.
Yes.
To be honest about the experience of good, bad, and indifferent, to at Seed&Spark, we feel like it's our responsibility to like really research things and understand the real dynamics of what's going on, and like make whatever phone calls we can make behind the scenes to like find out what's really going on, to talk to creators who've had distribution deals that like look favorable and like unpack, well, how did it actually go? You know, we are truth tellers, I feel like really defines what we're trying to do. Because I think, we're in the business of telling fantastic stories. We can't do that about the business of telling the stories. Because we've really shot ourselves in the foot, buying a myth that doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Dispelling those myths in favor of giving people something they can do every day that they own, that they control. That's so much more exciting to me than like, I mean, I love making, you know, like that filmmakers like Megan and Hannah got to work with the Duplass brothers. Like that's so delightful. It's so wonderful. But like Mark and I joke, like the whole point of a crowdfunding rally is when you get to the end of it, you've already raised money and built your audience. Like you don't need us anymore. You know what I mean? Getting picked would be the icing on the cake, but you've proven to yourself you don't need to get picked. You can pick yourself.
That's amazing. Absolutely true. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today?
Sorry, to break into the business today? Start talking to your audience, get to know them, get to love them, get to understand them.
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
I think my actual, it's not a lesson. It's like a constant maintenance, is how to be responsive and not reactive. So in leadership, in team building, in decision making, when you're working with lots of people collaboratively in this age of like instant digital communication, text message and Slack message and emails and all of that, it can be very tempting to just react and, write back right away. And I think being responsive and building a little thoughtfulness into how you react when people say things to you that you have strong reactions to, or people write things to you that you have strong reactions to. And that is a forever challenge. And so I have to be in a good space in order to be there. So whatever care it takes me to maintain this sense of responsiveness and not reactiveness, I think is really important.
Emily, I can't thank you enough for being a champion of filmmakers and creators out there, and for fighting the good battle that you are fighting every day. So thank you so much for everything you guys do at Seed&Spark.
Thank you. Thanks for this great podcast and great interview, Alex.
I want to thank Emily for coming on the show and dropping those knowledge bombs on the tribe. If you want to get links to anything we talked about in this episode, please head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/402. And I'll also have links to the first episode 23, that we did with Emily, which is really a masterclass in crowdfunding for filmmakers. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this episode was of value to you on your journey. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.